got it rolling there. I'll edit out the beginning. So we're here with Danny Barnes. Danny, you're out in support of Stove Up, your new album?
Yeah, and I just play a lot, so I do about 120 shows a year, traveling and playing. So
now you're solo tonight. How often do you do that?
That's my bread and butter. Mainly what I do is I play by myself. I've been doing that for about 20 years. Sometimes I play with bands and things, but my main body of my work is I play by myself.
Now, you've been out also with some other bands, and not that long ago you were out with Jeff Austin. I saw you down at Delfest.
Yeah.
Was that your only time at Delfest?
No, I've played there a few times. I'm going to play there this time, coming up here with my friend David Grissman, and I'm playing there next month with those guys.
Right, and that's how I wanted to ask you about that. How did that come about? I saw your blog post about the Masters and about Del and Dog, and how did this come about to be playing with them?
I live in a small town in the Northwest, up in Washington, and Mr. Grissman moved up there a few years ago, and him and I are good friends. And I see him pretty regular. We play all the time. We practice probably 3 times a week. We get together and play, and so he's one of my best friends and a real master of music, and so we play with Sam, his boy Sam, who's a very gifted musician as well. So I'm real fortunate that I live in a really small town, and one of the greatest musicians that ever walked the planet lives there and is sort of my teacher and stuff.
Well, and wasn't that sort of how he years ago hooked up with Jerry Garcia? He lived up the hill. At least that's the story.
They were best friends. They both had tragedies early. They both lost their dads when they were 10 years old. So Jerry watched his dad drown in the Pacific Ocean when he was 10, and Dog lost his dad when he was 10 as well. So they kind of bonded over that. They were childhood friends,
So the Delfest gig and playing with them there, how did that come about?
Which?
At Delfest this year coming up.
Well, just Dave and I have a band with Samson called the Dog Trio, and I don't know, they just wanted us to come play. So we're good friends with the McCurries and everything. So.
And I saw that, of course, Dave's also going to be part of that Brewgrass Congress.
Yeah. I'm excited to get to see that.
Now, you when you put out Stove Up, you called it your first bluegrass album.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how accurate is that. Did you mean first traditional or?
Well, I never have got a couple of guys from the Del McCurry band and like one of my buddies from Hot Rise and just made sort of an acoustic record. Most of my thing is I'm a songwriter, so most of my output, my oeuvre, so to speak, is songs, and so I'm not really an instrumentalist in that sense, the way Noam Pikelny or Bella Fleck is more of an instrumentalist on the banjo. I'm really a songwriter. I'm actually a poet, and so I make these songs that go around my poems, and that's kind of my interface with the world is as a songwriter. But I work really hard on the banjo. I've been working on it for 46 years, and I spend a lot of time practicing and working. And so I just Nick Forster wanted to do a record that focused on the banjo playing, and I was pretty challenged by it because normally I sing, and have songs and stuff like that. So it was a real challenge. And one of my all-time heroes, my main guy was String Bean. I saw him when I was 9 years old. Might have been Tim. I think I was 9 in about 1970, and I started playing the banjo right after that. But then shortly after that, I got that Don Stover record and the Things in Life record. And Don was a big hero of mine as well because he sang and wrote songs in front of the band and everything, and was a banjo player. At that time, most of the guys that played the banjo were in bands, but he fronted a band as a banjo player. So him and John Hartford kind of were, I never got to meet Don, but I was friends with John, but I never got to meet Don. But anyway, that's the connection there.
But that was kind of the inspiration then for this album?
Yeah.
And of course now you played with Nick down at Festi last year.
Yeah, sure did. Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun.
Thanks.
And you had the fellas from the Dusters sitting in with you.
Yeah, he's one of my heroes, and it's great to have him as a friend and playing buddy and everything. And he does a lot for the world. He was a very positive influence on the world,
And of course, you toured a while back with Jeff Austin. What was that like?
I was in his band for about a year and a half. You know, it was really cool. I got to work a lot with that guy Eric Tureen, the bassist. It was really neat to get to know him. You know, I think in that band he was like the best soloist in the band was the bassist, and so him and I play pretty regular now, and I became really good friends with Eric, and that was a real gift out of that. I think was getting to be friends with Eric. You know.
Now, I saw your blog post where you give people in a band advice about how to do things when they're in the band. So what was it like for you being in Jeff's band?
It was good, you know. I enjoyed just all I had to do was play the banjo, you know, and so that's kind of a good thing. Normally I'm, you know, it's my name out there and it's my songs and I sign the contracts and work on the publicity and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot to it, you know. Like people, you know, when people come see you play, they assume you sort of appear like in Star Trek, that you just sort of appear, you know. They don't realize what all you had to do to get there, you know. Like I played in, you know, DC last night, and it, you know, it's like 3,000-mile flight, you know, across the country to get over there, and it's a lot of work, you know. I don't suppose that they shouldn't really know that. It's, you know, it's you know, it's my job to sort that out or whatever. But, you know, I don't know. There's a lot of, you have to put in a lot of work to do this, you know. Can't be afraid of work.
Getting back just real quick to Delfest, because we're doing a lot previewing that and with
Oh,
that
good.
coming up. Talk a little bit about that festival and you know, just the atmosphere there. And I mean, I've never been to any of the festivals out west, but in the Northeast, that place is pretty special to us.
Yeah. Well, you know, Del is just like, you just can't. That guy is the top of the line as far as I'm concerned. He's and as far as the guys that are playing right now, he is the guy. He's the top guy. So anything that has his involved with him is, you know, he's just a master, and his energy and the family, and they've just done so much for the music, and his boys are so awesome. And, you know, and they put that festival on. They kind of bring a lot of their friends on, and it's just a beautiful thing, because really the focus is like on the music, you know. Like a lot of these festivals are more sort of, they have more like kind of a party thing going on, and that's cool, you know, and all that stuff. But that festival seems like the thing is the music, and that's what makes me excited about it.
You know, when you talk about the music, something that really impressed me when I saw you down at Milk Boy in Philadelphia last year, you called the audience up closer. You said, "We're not going to play real loud. Come on up here where you can hear." And I almost sensed, were you telling them, "Please shut up and listen"?
Well, it's kind of a losing battle, you know, anymore, because like people, it's tough for people to pay attention anymore, really. Like, it's tough to, you know, I mean, people just can't focus. I mean, if you just take an example, if you just watch a current movie, like if you watch an old black and white movie, they have these really long shots, you know, and now if you watch a movie, there's like 1,000,000 edits. Even in a minute of film, there's 75 little cuts, you know, because people just really have a hard, like they're changing baseball because people can't pay attention to baseball. They can't focus on baseball because it's, you know, it's like this super exciting game with all these brilliant guys, and it's just this amazing game, and, you know, they're having to change it because people can't focus on it. You know, they're looking at their phones and all that kind of stuff, and it's just, I don't know, so I feel like that's part of my raison d'etre, or so to speak, is to try to get people to stop talking for a minute and try to listen to some music or enjoy something. It's, you know, it's getting rarer and rarer. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting to be a little bit like, you know, you kids get out of my lawn kind of guy, which I'm totally comfortable with that. But it's just, you know, it's just tough. I mean, people just really have a hard time focusing on stuff, you know. And so I don't know. I'm trying to sort of help people sort of put their phones down for a minute and quit talking and try to pay attention to something. 'Cause that's where everything's happening, you know. But people, if you're talking, you're kind of missing it, you know. But anyway, it's tough, you know. Plus, you know, a lot of times I like to play the banjo into a mic, and normally people play with pickups and everything, and so they can push the PA at like, you know, 100 dB, 110 dB, so that they can like yell and scream, and the music is still over them, you know. But somehow, like, to me, banjos and fiddles and mandolins, when you start getting it up over 100 dB, it really has this really grating sound at about 3,000 cycles. It's sort of really brittle, and you have like this sort of a lump there in the upper mid, you know, of the mandolin, the banjo, and the fiddle and everything can kind of be in the upper end of the guitar. There's like this giant lump, in the upper mid there, and it's really wearing, you know. Like a rock band has all this stuff happening at 200 cycles and all this stuff, and 160 and all this stuff. You have all this stuff kind of down here in the low end, and it's more like a sort of a flat line loud, but with like bluegrass when it's really cranked, or acoustic music when it's really cranked, it has this bump in the upper end. And I don't know, it's just not the most pleasing sound to me, you know. But when you play into a mic, it just has a more softer tone, and you're getting all the frequencies from the instrument. But it's you can only play about 85 dB or something like that, 80 dB, which is not a lot louder than, say, you know, normal conversation or whatever, you know. But the sound is a lot richer. But you don't really hear, you don't really hear that too much these days. You know, if you go see Dell, they play into mics and stuff. You get that full sound. David Grisman, they play into mics. You can get that full range, you know. But typically, the bands that are sort of playing for a party, you know, they have to crank that PA up. You know, they got to get it up over 100 dB, and you know, and it's just it changes the music. You know, it puts it in a different. It's like having someone scream at you the whole time. You know, which with rock music, and I'm like a metal fan and punk rock fan. I grew up on that music, and I can dig it in that context. But for some reason, like a fiddle at 120 dB, 110 dB, say, is just brutal to me. You know, and a mandolin too. It's just brutal.
It's interesting that you bring up Dell and talking about it, because I had this conversation with him, and he told me, he said it doesn't bother him. He said because both because he came up playing all the loud, noisy clubs, and he said besides that I got a microphone and an amplifier, so I can be louder than them.
Yeah, well, he's got an advantage because he's a living legend, you see, and he's also a member of the Grand League. He's got a little advantage over me, whereas I've kind of got to prove myself every night. He doesn't have to do that. He's got quite an advantage over me on it, but nonetheless, he makes a good point as usual.
One last question, because I know you got to get ready for the show. Tell us the story behind "Get It While You Can." That is just such a popular song.
Well, I'm glad people like that. There's really not. It's just a poem. It's just that most of my characters are like these poor kind of farm type people that sort of get thrust into these contemporary settings. You know, like I've always been sort of fascinated by the sort of the collision of the old ways and the new ways, you know, and so like this collision of modernism and then sort of postmodernism is just, that sort of permeates a lot of my poetry and things. And so that poem is just the character is sort of describing his life, you know, in just about a 3-minute song, and you know, it's kind of like he has. Where I come from, those old farm guys had these almost like this real kind of almost poetic way of speaking, you know, and they had these little funny little turns of phrases that were like little poems and stuff, and so it's sort of like sort of a little 3-minute movie about this guy that just sort of talks about his life, you know. And he's trying. The basic idea is he's trying to take advantage of things as best he can, but you know, he has a lot of challenges in doing that.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you tonight.
Thank you.